Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Lux webinar. A topic that I think, unless you've really been living under a rock over the last couple of years, you've probably heard and thought a lot about. Maybe even been dragged into an AI project or two, because it's in those 2 years since the advent of ChatGPT, there's definitely been a lot of action in the business world about AI, large language models, OpenAI, and all the rest. And so we're going to be taking the chance here to step back and look at some of the lessons from all of the AI frenzy over the last couple of years. So my name's Mike Holman. I'm the SVP here at Lux Research and moderating today's session. The person taking us through all of that will be our presenter, Anthony Schiavo, Senior Director and Principal Analyst here. So anytime during the webinar, you can type questions into that questions box on your screen. We will have some time for Q&A at the end, and we'll get to as many as we can. But if your question doesn't get answered, or you think up a great one afterwards, you can email us questions@luxresearchinc.com, and we'll get back to you there. Quick technical note: if you have any technical difficulties, as a frozen screen or something, usually just refreshing the browser window for the On24 system works pretty well to fix that. And of course, check your internet connection. So I think without any further ado, I'll hand things over to Anthony and get into the presentation.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And I'm very excited to be talking about AI. I've been traveling all over the country, having conversations with our clients about AI. And so it's great to bring that all to you. I want to start very quickly with just a little refresher. AI, it's a set of mathematical models, but it's also a tool for automation, right? It's a tool that mediates labor, and it's a source of new knowledge. It can teach us things. We use AI, it accelerates our understanding of systems, and it allows us to model systems that previously we didn't have that capability to model, right? Whether that's human language in the case of LLMs, or something much more narrow and specific, a material system, right? So our definition of AI is AIs are probabilistic tools that are trained on large amounts of data, especially and ideally valuable data, which can replicate the outputs of complex tasks. We think this is a good definition. We think this captures everything from, those really large models to things like random forest algorithms, where you're using a much smaller, much more valuable data set to try and extract some information. But this is our definition of AI going forward. And I think it's important to recognize, as I said, it really is all the above. It's pure math, it's a tool for automation, and it's a source of new knowledge. We did a webinar on this, really defining and getting into some of the philosophical underpinnings of our views on AI. You can check that out once you're done listening to this webinar. But for now, we're going to leave it at that. We're going to assume everyone's fairly familiar with AI, at least the groundwork, and we're going to move on. So first, we want to discuss our key learnings over the last 2 years, and also a little bit of where we see things going, right? What developments we think are going to happen in the future, what the challenges are going to be. And then, in a really fun turn, we are going to take some lessons from Lux's AI development. Lux, you may know if you're a Lux client, we've rolled out some AI-empowered tools recently. Luxer, one of them, our virtual research assistant. And so we went on our own AI application development journey in-house. We're going to talk about that. And then lastly, we are going to talk about what you should really do about AI. AI works. I think it's worth starting there. AI does work for business. It is a useful tool to particularly manage large pools of knowledge. So, the internal documentation at a large company stored in text documents. AI is really great at helping you find those things. It's also great at automating basic knowledge labor tasks. Everything from coding, right, which has been probably the most impacted space. Even small tasks like proofreading can be pretty helpful there, right? And it's being used, right? This is a survey from the St. Louis Fed 40% of the US population is using generative AI almost daily, right? 1 in 3 is using it daily. So this is not like some other digital technologies we've looked at in the past, like blockchain, where you've seen a lot of money and a lot of hype, but maybe not a lot of adoption. No, 1 in 3 Americans is using this technology. So it is out there, it is being used. But I think when you think about these applications, right, you have examples like the sort of Science Co. This is your classic. We're going to take all of our documents. We're working with Microsoft. We're probably already on their cloud service. Something like a SharePoint. We're going to give that model access to our documents. It can read them. It can answer questions about them. It can retrieve them. A lot of companies are already doing this. A year ago, I'd say this was kind of cutting edge. Now I think it's something that's increasingly common. And, programming is another good example, right? I mentioned this. Microsoft's done a lot of really interesting work where they are giving ChatGPT access to a large number of existing pre-written functions, and then it can automate sort of programmed workflows on the fly. And this really reduces the barrier of what I call human-machine interaction, right? You can talk to the robot like it's a person. This is a big change. And so these two sort of tasks of knowledge management and human-machine interface and automating the sort of the production of these knowledge labor tasks, this is what AI is good for. But I think it's a little bit less clear if AI works as a business or if AI works, for society, right? I think there's still a lot of unresolved questions here. The first, and there's two big tensions: AI profitability versus AI competition, and then the power of AI as a tool for knowledge management versus the power of AI as a tool for slop production, right? So getting into first the question of profitability and competition, I think it's worth establishing that in the tech industry, you have two basic business models. One of which is monopoly. So Google, classic monopolist here, 90+% market share. They basically give away their product for free to maintain that market share, or even pay companies like Apple to maintain that market share. And they generate revenue by squeezing a huge number of users for a relatively small amount of money. The alternative is what Apple does, the sort of walled garden business model, where they have a lower market share of their target markets, but they have really substantial barriers to switching. All your stuff is on iPhone, all your photos, you're using iMessenger, right? You're using all these different features, and it's challenging to switch, right? And you can generate a lot more value from each user, right? So, good example of this, Apple is recently starting to charge, take a 30% basically cut of all sales within the App Store. And companies want to access this. So you have outside companies paying to access this walled garden. Google being the most high profile example, but plenty of others, and including OpenAI, right? They're essentially paying to access this by giving Apple free AI services. It's, I should also mention both these business models are kind of under attack, right? The FTC is going after Google. The EU is going after Apple. What's happening in AI is that LLMs are becoming commoditized. Everyone is trying to make the best LLM possible. What that means is using the largest amount of data possible. And what that means is that everyone has essentially arrived at pretty similar data sets, right? If you want to use the maximum amount of data, that's basically everything, right? All the information on the internet. Companies have arrived at that point, and model performance has really tightened up. When OpenAI launched ChatGPT, it was really sort of revolutionary in terms of its performance, at least something that was consumer facing in that way. And it really kind of popped off as a result of that. Now those capabilities are widely replicated, and the gap between OpenAI and everyone else is much, much smaller. And, that brings up the question of business model. What is the right model for AI companies to make money? it's quite difficult, I think, to maintain the monopoly business model. You know, I just talked about how the models are all becoming commodified. But I think even more problematically, for AI companies, free users are a lot more challenging. Google spends a fraction of a cent on each query, each Google search. OpenAI is spending significantly more money for each free use of ChatGPT. So you're just sinking a lot more cost into each individual free user. And that makes it hard to, have this huge market share of non-revenue generating individuals. The walled garden model is also a little bit challenging, right? There's not really a good hardware element. As we're going to discuss a little bit later, you can switch between AI providers without a ton of challenge. And these companies are also giving AI away for free right now, or for less than what it costs. So if you want to lock people in, it's still going to take a long time to raise those prices to a profitable level. I think the best walled garden model is probably within the existing cloud service providers, companies like Microsoft and Google, AWS, right, who have people locked into their ecosystem already and can provide AI services through that. And there's also the issue of the sort of AI-powered startup boom that we're seeing right now. You have approximately 1 billion AI-powered startups out there on the market. I'm sure you've seen their services advertised, that are mostly providing a wrapper around an established large language model. You can see a number of them on this just snapshot from OpenAI's website. You have companies like Consensus, which is a academic search large language model company. But there's also, just on this page, SciSpace and Scholar GPT. So, just within the top 12 trending GPTs, we see that there is a lot of competition. These companies are not really differentiated, right? The value is really the model. They don't own that. Companies like OpenAI can, if they want to, if they think it's profitable, either take a cut or shut off their access or buy them out or just replicate their product. So these companies are really vulnerable. They don't have a moat, I think, in most cases. And if they do, it's pretty minimal. So I think we really see a bit of an AI crash in the next couple of years. There's a lot of companies out there, a lot of startups. They're very undifferentiated. There's a lot of cutthroat competition and probably going to be a lot of consolidation as a result of that. And AI services, we know they're deeply unprofitable, right? We know that OpenAI, for example, is spending something like $2.50 for every $1 that it generates in revenue, and that they have to increase prices a lot. They're openly talking about this to achieve their goals. So there's a lot of chaff that's going to be separated from the wheat in the next 2 years, because I think the big thing we've learned is that we have not figured out the business model for AI, even though the technology works. Second big thing, knowledge management versus AI slop. So knowledge management, it refers to this ability to use AI to sort through a large amount of data and find the piece you want. The problem is that AI is also a great tool for generating data, particularly low quality, not very meaningful data, right? Information pollution is this term for it. And you see this most obviously on the internet, especially in social media. If you've been on Facebook recently, you have encountered AI generated content. And often it's quite strange and frankly off-putting. And I think there's this sense that this is really a problem for social media, right? Or for the internet writ large. But we're already seeing this happen within the academic papers landscape. There's a lot of companies, a lot of papers that have been published that have been identified with some amount of AI generated content. And, if you're a patent company, there is a real sort of, I would say, opportunity to use these technologies to publish lots of garbage patents. And this is a real nuclear bomb for patent trolls. And there's also a risk of misinformation getting absorbed into these AI systems. Um, I think there was a lot of hype around this or talk about this, when Google was rolling out its systems and it was like recommending that you put glue on pizza. But this is still happening, right? It is misinformed tweet from October 20th, right? Next day, October 21st, someone writes an article based on this misinformed tweet, probably use AI in the writing of this article. And then you have, this is Microsoft Copilot serving this misinformation, right? And again, this is within 2 days, right, of this tweet. And the real information, which is that, revenues went up, not down, that was published. That was out there on the internet. So the idea that we have safeguards or that AI is not serving misinformation, to me, it's really false. Like, I think that companies have gotten a little bit better at avoiding the most sort of egregious examples of bad information or misinformation, but AI is still serving a lot of misinformation. And this is very much a risk for companies, right? AI tools, they're going to they are already dramatically expanding the availability or the ability to create data, right? So just look at meeting summarization is a good example of this, where this company Otter AI, and there's about, again, 1 billion of these companies trying to do this. You can write notes and summarize meetings 30 times faster. And it seems like, great, we're going to deploy this and we'll summarize and we'll have great notes of all the meetings we take, and then everything we have will be searchable. But I think that everyone has probably had the experience of being in a meeting and maybe only one valuable thing gets said the whole time, or maybe no valuable things get said the whole time, right? Just because you have this capability to record and produce information, it doesn't mean that that information is valuable. It also doesn't mean that this is going to end up saving you time. We have data management tools today, which are far, far more powerful than they were 40 or even 20 years ago. And we don't spend less time managing information or data. We spend more time, right? Because, with this powerful tools, we've really expanded our capabilities. So I think the risk here is that instead of spending 30x less time writing notes, you write 30x more notes as an organization. And already, I think corporations are overwhelmed by the data they have. They can't manage it. They can't understand it. Just flooding the zone with more junk is not going to improve the decision-making capabilities. So these are really the two tensions, right? Information management might get worse, and we still don't have a good business model for AI. Let's focus in on Lux's AI journey. We developed this research assistant. It's a tool that retrieves information from our website, and it helps our clients get it much more quickly and easily. The first lesson I want to take away from this is application selection, right? We did a very sort of thorough evaluation of all these different applications. This is actually the chart we used. I had to change the names of the options so my CEO wouldn't kill me, but this is the actual chart. And we wanted to find something that was disruptive, that would have a relatively high likelihood of success and have a reasonable, although not necessarily budget type of cost. And very crucially, we picked an existing pain point. We know that when our clients get into the funnel, we really benefit from them, or they really benefit from us when they use us at the earliest stages of their innovation journey, getting the right ideas, brainstorming. But often interfacing with our research is a bit of a barrier there, right? And we know that after they've done that, we want them to talk to our analysts. So we integrated those features into the system. I think what's really important is that this is a core existing use case and a core pain point for us, right? This is not a peripheral thing. This is not some existing function. AI is really, we view it as an enabler. So it has to be used in, an existing system or an existing product that creates value. Secondly, we used it in something that's really day-to-day. And third, there's a lot of value here for internal stakeholders as well. we integrated a scheduling tool within this AI feature that our own client support teams here at Lux use every day. So there's internal stakeholders who are piloting this, and then our clients are increasingly using it because it's something that they do on a day-to-day basis. Lesson number 2, build versus buy. We tested both. We actually worked with a development partner plus our own development team to build our own product versus testing an external product vendor. We did a lot of evaluation and testing. We developed a whole criteria: accuracy, relevance, validity, tone, and style. We included 13 members across all roles at Lux. That's about 10% of our company, maybe a little bit less. So, we're not a big organization, so that's a lot of people. And, we had, 80, I think, hours of testing in just the first round, right? And we tested both those models side by side. Ultimately, we chose to build our own solution, right? Building was more expensive, but it gave better results. It gave us more flexibility in terms of AI model selection, which is really crucial as we get into the next point. And it allowed us to iterate features more quickly, right? Obviously, we're not building the LLM here. We're building the system that uses the LLM, but building was ultimately the right choice for us. And a big part of that was IP and security. We really try and position ourselves as a trusted advisor. Without that trust, we don't have a business. AI, it creates a lot of risk, a lot of IP risk, both internal and external, right? So there's risk of our IP being handed over to AI companies. There's risk of our clients' queries and IP being handed over to AI companies. And there's even risk, we don't want to bring something in to our clients, right? That is, we don't know the provenance of, right? If we can't guarantee the provenance of that information, that's an IP risk as well for our clients. So we were very cognizant of this and we were very concerned. And we built our AI architecture to really enable swapping of different AI providers as a result of this, right? So when you use the system, you send a query to us, that goes to our research database, right? That then goes, the relevant research along with the query and the research, the prompt, all goes to the large language model. And the response comes back to you and ultimately back to the user, right? What this means is that we have the whole research database retrieval of information system separated from the prompt generation, right? Or not the prompt generation, the response generation. So we can swap that part out in a very flexible kind of way. And this is important because we talked about how AI models are commoditized, but the actual products and businesses aren't really yet. There's big differences. One key example is on IP. So OpenAI, they don't retain any of the data for more than 30 days that we send them. That's a great way to help ensure that security. Whereas Google, in anything we submit to them through their API, they get a permanent, unrevocable, and royalty-free license to use that content for, various activities, right? Host, store, modify, communicate, and publish. So that's totally unacceptable, right? This distinction more or less eliminated Google's models from contention in our own AI journey. So this is very crucial. So, security is really important, much more so than performance. So building a flexible AI provider, agnostic architecture is really crucial. Security influenced our choices, and maintaining storage and really maximizing our control over that allows us to ensure end-to-end encryption and security. Okay, so we talked about that, talked about these tensions, where AI is going, the challenges it's going to face, some of the lessons from our own development. Now, what should you do with that? What should you do about it? The first thing, develop AI controls. We heard from the Fed, right? 40% of the US population is using it to some degree. People in your company are using AI, right? If you don't already have an AI control system, if you're not already giving people access to AI in an authorized way, they're using it in an unauthorized way, and probably in an unadvisable way. So the first thing you need to do is really develop these controls, and quite quickly. Secondly, develop unique pools of data, right? when you think about AI, the AIs themselves, they're quickly becoming commoditized. The value is created in the use of AI to access and to unlock unique pools of data, whether that's our own research as a research company, whether that's internal data you've collected from your field, work, your experimentation. There's a lot of different pools of data, but the use of AI on unlocking those pools of data is what creates value. The AI doesn't create that much value at all by itself. And lastly, you should prepare for AI disruption in the near term and workforce shifts in the long term. I think what's important to recognize is when you look at something like gig work, it really popped off in the 2014, 2016 timeframe. But it took until, after the pandemic for, things to really hit millions of workers and really begin to change the workforce. I think AI is kind of similar. It'll take probably about a decade to really begin to change the workforce. So while there's some near-term disruption, particularly in, I think, areas like search, areas like information retrieval from patent databases you should be worried about, the long-term change to how your workforce is structured, that's probably going to take at least a decade. So with that, just a few final thoughts. One, large models, they're increasingly commodified, right? Valuable data is where the value is going to live. Two, IP and security are the big concerns right now, much more so than performance. And three, there's going to be a bumpy few years. We don't have a business model for AI that makes sense or that makes money. We don't have a lot of good understanding of AI. A lot of people are using it in unsanctioned ways. AI is the real deal. It does work, but there's going to be a lot of challenges over the next couple of years. So with that, I want to say thank you. We've got a number of upcoming webinars, energy transition, CPG innovation, and I think we have a little bit of time for questions as well. So Mike, any questions?
Yeah, we do indeed. You can keep those coming into the questions box. If we don't get to yours, we on the webinar here, we will be able to follow up afterwards. I think, one of the things a few people have asked, variations on the question of, where are, for the innovation leaders and the folks that we work with, where are they really at right now in terms of deploying this AI for knowledge management, right? You gave the example of ScienceCo. Is that, the kind of the level they're at? Is that becoming the standard now? Or is that still a little bit ahead of where most companies are? What's sort of the state of progress for most organizations?
Yeah, I think that's becoming the standard now, I would say. I would say a lot of companies have already gone to or are in the process of going to their cloud provider, their storage provider, and saying, hey, let's hook up AI to this, right? I think that's increasingly becoming table stakes. A year ago, I would say that was pretty cutting edge. Now, I would say probably the majority, at least 40%, but probably like the majority of our clients have done that type of thing, just based on my conversations with clients and my gut feel, the questions I'm getting asked, right? So I think that's becoming increasingly table stakes, right? I think moving much past that is pretty rare. So that's kind of where people are at these days.
Yeah, that I'd say that aligns with my sense of it as well. A lot of organizations are at least in the early stages of that, having some type of tool. Mm-hmm. One of the other things you mentioned is the importance of AI controls, people using it in unauthorized ways, and that's definitely a risk, and that's out there. But how do you think people should be balancing that against, trying to against innovation, essentially, right? Because we've talked to people. Yeah. We had a conversation with Isaac Brown on the Innovation Matters podcast, where he was talking about some of the adoption barriers that, just even conventional machine learning companies are seeing. Because some of these companies put in these big bureaucratic, like it's an AI council, you got to jump through all these hoops to do anything that even smacks of AI that's really slowing down, what might be reasonable and fairly safe adoption. So how do you think about striking that balance?
I think you need to start with a bit of an assessment of your risk. If you're in a heavily regulated industry, right, then this the value of innovation versus risk management is going to look a little bit different than if you are in, a different kind of industry, right? Something that's maybe a little bit less regulated or just doesn't have those types of risk factors. So that's the first thing. You got to actually understand where you're at. And, for some clients, that heavily bureaucratic, slow and steady type of approach is the right choice, right? But I think the big thing is just channeling, giving your individuals as much access to the tools as possible, right? So what I think you want to avoid, or what people do, is when they want to try something, they will go to their company's official tools first. And then if they can do what they want to do with those, they will. And if they can't, then they'll go off to somewhere else. And that's where the problems will emerge. So the biggest thing is just to expand the size of the toolbox, right? You should be thinking about multi-cloud, right? If you're a Microsoft company, but Google has the ability to turn documents into podcasts, you should be thinking about how do we set up access to those in a way that's aligns with our IT, aligns with our overall, security infrastructure, right? So just expanding that availability and making sure people know where to go, that there's like an AI sandbox where all the different tools and access modes live, and people know that there's not, when they go looking for something, they find it, right? From there, once you have the sandbox, once you have the monitoring, then that's pretty easy. But it's really about setting up that sandbox.
Yeah, and I think we could say also that's similar to the approach that we've ended up taking it at Lux also in that respect, right? We've given a variety of AI-enabled tools to the research teams and even sales teams and folks as well but made sure that it's set up in a way so that any data that gets shared with it is protected and not reused or anything like that.
Because we knew people were going to use it one way or another. So you need to
get them, and there's a clear policy about it, all that stuff. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So indeed. All right. Well, I think that is about all we have time for with questions. We will be sharing the slide presentation and recording with all the attendees today. So thanks for all of the time and attention. We appreciate that. We also appreciate if you could take a minute as you leave to respond to the survey that'll pop up for you. We really do look at that feedback. It's a short survey. We really do look at the feedback closely and use that for future webinars. Speaking of future webinars, check some of those out. There's more on the Lux website, and we'll look forward to hopefully seeing you in another one soon. Thanks again. Have a great rest of the day.